Welcome to the Boschcast with James Boschman and Denise Young, where we talk about Manitoba real estate and everything else that's on our minds. And we're live. What's going on, everybody?
Hello.
Welcome to the Boschcast. I think we're episode 15 now. And thanks so much for everybody tuning in and continuing to watch these and or listen to them. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, as it helps our business, helps with the algorithm, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because I'm going to have a lot more content coming up on there in the near future, working on some really cool stuff. But let's kick this off with some cheesy dad jokes.
Okay.
So I thought I won the argument with my wife about how to arrange the dining room furniture, but when I got home, the tables were turned. Oh my God. Yeah, that's a shitty one.
Yeah.
This one's good. I like this one. My dad used to say to me, "Son, there are two types of people in this world: those who can count and those who can't." You get it?
Yeah.
Well, luckily I can count. So, those are terrible.
Those were terrible.
But a lot of stuff has happened in the interest rate world.
Yeah.
And that is not sadly not a shitty dad joke. Bank of Canada decided to raise rates again, 25 basis points just this past week. And the market, I feel like, for the most part, priced that one in. Everybody pretty much expected they were going to do that. And I've been listening to a lot of stuff and so much macroeconomic stuff and different podcasts. If anybody out there is listening to this, if you're somewhat interested in the macroeconomics of this country, macroeconomics and in the local economics of this country, and how the two interplay, there's a podcast called the Looney Hour podcast, and it is a macro podcast. It consists of an asset management guy who runs an asset management company, a big wig realtor from Vancouver, Steve Zaretsky, and another guy who is like a macro economic guru. And they talk about what's going on in the world, but how it relates to Canada. So it's kind of cool. And they obviously talk a lot about real estate. They talk about the interest rates. They make predictions about what they think is going to happen. Sometimes they get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong. But it's just interesting to hear three guys that are, heavily in the space, just kind of talk about what's actually happening. And the consensus is that these rates will not go down.
Right.
Probably until, we don't really know, but
no, we don't know, but I think our prediction is about next year.
Yeah.
Year.
Probably middle of the year if something doesn't completely break by then. But that's kind of what the Bank of Canada wants. They want to see, it was interesting after the rate announcement last week, Tiff Macklem came out and he did a press conference. Unlike the rate announcement, the one that they did prior, and he didn't come out at all, talk about it. But this time around, he gave a pretty lengthy press conference, and he mentioned immigration a number of times. He mentioned jobs data coming in a lot stronger than expected, and they want to see pain being felt in the economy. They want job loss. I personally think that it's going to happen probably sooner than later. I think it's happening now. And but the way that these policymakers work is they look at lagging data. They look at stuff that's happened months ago. They look at job data from June, and to kind of determine their policy decisions. And by the time the real-time data, boots on the ground, anecdotal stuff reaches the policymaker, a lot of time has to pass.
Right.
And so I don't think that rate cuts are even in the vocabulary right now until they see more pain. But the next Bank of Canada rate decision or meeting is in September. And I think there's going to be a lot, just in terms of the jobs data, in terms of the economic picture as a whole. I think there's going to be a lot of changes from now until September.
Right.
A lot can happen.
It's definitely got to curb spending. I know myself, I had to renew my mortgage, and when you're paying an extra $500 a month in interest to your mortgage payments, like that's $500 less a month I can either invest or spend. Right. So obviously it's going to curb spending.
The Bank of Canada sees that there's still too much froth in the economy. People are still not having as much of a difficult time going out and buying or leasing that new vehicle, or even silly things like, I'm going to go buy a new cell phone, or I'm going to go to the movies every week, or I'm going to go on that trip, or whatever it is. All of those little things add up, and the interest rate increases are designed to stop that frivolous spending. Bank of Canada made comments about like how there's still a lot of savings in the economy that people have, accumulated throughout the pandemic, which, there's definitely truth to that, but I think there's a lot less savings than they realize. I think that they're pretty out of touch when it comes to knowing exactly what's going on in the average Canadian family.
I'm so sorry.
They're upset about the increased rates too.
I guess so. She's like, I'm not going to get any of my high quality treats. I'm going to have to go to daycare less. My mom's talking about grooming me herself.
So I think that there's a great economist, Benjamin Tal, and he said it perfectly. He said, if the Bank of Canada had to choose between higher interest rates for longer, or higher inflation for longer, and a recession, they would choose a recession all day long.
Oh yeah,
because higher inflation is terrible for any economy. It essentially debases currency and drives the value down of our money. And if you think about what a government, governments have control over people through the money. And if they don't know what they're doing, and if they can't curb inflation, then people start looking to different methods of exchanging goods, whether it's like bartering
and stuff,
Bitcoin or whatever it is. And then governments don't have control, and governments want to have control, right? So
it's hard to tax bartering.
they're going to do whatever they can to, come hell or high water, make sure that, the value of our dollar doesn't completely crumble.
Right.
And if that means throwing our economy into a recession, they will do that. But I mean, recessions is, it's a scary term because, and I don't think I've really felt a recession before. But I think it's a little bit more. It sounds a little bit more doom and gloom than what it is. Yeah, there's going to be job loss and stuff like that, but ultimately, Bank of Canada, these central banks, like, they have one tool in their tool belt, and that's a screwdriver. And so we saw what they did during the pandemic when they thought that the whole economic sky was falling and people had to shelter in place or work from home, or they had to close businesses. And you can argue whether or not that was a good idea or not, but their initial response was to use quantitative easing to drop interest rates to make it easier on people. They did like mortgage payment deferrals. They did, stimulus packages.
Yeah.
They introduced 30% more currency in the money supply, which is the reason why we are where we are. But I mean, that was their reaction. And so Tiff Macklem, in his press conference, he said in their economic forecast, there is no recession, but that's what you would say,
Sure.
because you don't want to terrify people.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, the sentiment is going around. So I think that a combination of the sentiment out there and the interest rates putting the pinch on people, like them turning the screw, it's going to have a quicker impact than what people think.
Right.
And I'm in the camp of, by next year, halfway through the year, that's when they start the rate cutting conversation, the quantitative easing conversation. If we're not in a recessionary period, but you never know. They want to land this plane at 2% inflation. We are hovering right around 3%.
Yeah.
And I think 2% is going to be tough, but they might do it without a recession. Depends on how many jobs are lost. But how does that relate to our local real estate market? Because that's what it's all about here.
Right.
And our local economy. And, given that you and I are both pretty boots on the ground, actively showing houses, actively, working with buyers, working with sellers, like we're the first ones to see it and feel it, kind of thing, when it comes to residential real estate. And, anecdotally, we are still seeing multiple offers.
We are still seeing multiple offers. I do feel like there's less of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like this July has been like a more normal July compared to pre-pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you definitely felt as soon as Canada Day hit, a shift in the market. And we've always felt that as soon as the kids were done school and vacations started, we'd feel a shift in the market for July. And we definitely felt that. And we are seeing, multiple homes sitting on the market past offer dates, but we're also seeing, like, if your house is showing top notch and priced really well, it's still selling in multiple offers.
The other thing that people don't realize is that these interest rate increases takes a while for them to take hold, like take effect. And so just because they announce rates going up, and if the fixed rates or variables go up, for buyers who have gotten a pre-approval recently or before the rate hikes, they're typically locked in for anywhere between 90 to 120 days.
Right.
And so they're not subject to that rate unless they can't purchase within that period of time.
Right.
And
I think they still have to qualify at the higher, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that the current fixed rate is like the median rate is 5.34, but that was that it was 5.34 prior to the rate hike. Like that is it not changing yet? It
Yeah.
hasn't affected the banks yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of that. A lot. I'm seeing a lot of buyers that are in the market right now trying to beat that potential hike, like in their,
Yeah.
if they don't buy something, they don't lock in, then they're going to be subject to the new rate, which
I'm seeing, sorry, you go ahead.
could qualify them for less and
Right.
put them into a totally different market that they don't want to be
That's true. Yeah. I'm seeing people wanting to make sure that they can blend their rates. So having to give up possession on their house, find somewhere to live until they get their money so that they can take possession like after land transfer has happened so that they can not have a bridge.
Yeah.
And because, you can only do the bridge when you're doing a new mortgage, not when you're blending the two rates. And so I have, clients that are saying like that's going to make a few $100 a month difference in payment, so for them it's worth it to find somewhere to live in the interim for that long-term savings, right?
Yeah, for sure. The other thing too is the I had a kind of I'm seeing more like creatively structured deals
Yeah.
on resale houses. Like I had one recently, first time buyers, they were pre-approved at a really, really good rate. But the bank had said, not only do you need to buy something before this rate expires, but you actually have to take possession before this rate expires.
Wow.
And so there was a little bit of a push, and we found the perfect house, but the sellers weren't willing to give up like physical possession. Like they just couldn't move out until like the end of a month.
Right.
And the rate was expiring at the middle of that month. So what we did is we set the legal possession date for the middle of the month, and then did like a lease back, kind of, under the table agreement for the existing sellers to live there and kind of like take care of everything, just so that the money could transfer, just so that the money could leave the bank and go into the trust account and transfer, which is, requires, doing a walkthrough for the legal possession to make sure that everything is tickety-boo. But it's kind of nice because the sellers get to meet the buyers, and it's a different way of doing things, but we're going to start seeing a lot more of that, I think.
You're going to have to see realtors using their negotiation skills and their creativity and even like better marketing skills. I mean, we had one this week that sold for $36,000 higher than the closest and most recent comp because we market it. And I mean, I'm not going to disparage another realtor, but I'm just saying like there is definitely a difference in skills, right? And we definitely need to be using them.
Absolutely.
In this market.
Yeah. Yeah. Houses, when markets start to shift a little bit, it's not doom and gloom. You just have to make sure that you put a little bit of extra effort in, making sure that your house looks amazing, making sure that you're doing the best that you can.
And listening to the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're not in the FOMO market anymore. The FOMO market was when rates were at 2% for a 5-year fixed, and everybody was entering the market.
Yeah.
And they, everybody wanted to be a homeowner or upsize or downsize or be an investor. Of course, why wouldn't you when rates are that low?
Absolutely.
And, everybody was feeling FOMO. So houses were flying off the shelf. You didn't even have to clean them. as a seller. But now,
Yeah, you didn't have to do much as a seller, and
now you got to do whatever you can to stand out. Because,
exactly.
um, we're fortunate, I think, here where um, we don't have an oversupply. But with that being said, I'm seeing the inventory pick up a little bit compared to where it was during the pandemic.
Yeah,
And it's no longer like, okay, we got one house, in within like 3 blocks, in St. James to look at. Now
yeah,
it's like we've got 10 houses to look at, and or 5. And when rates creep up, people are going to be a little bit more price conscious, going to be a little bit more value conscious. And
yeah,
so they want to, when they see your home, they want to be like, wow, this is a great buy. This is a great home. This is a great value.
yeah.
Not,
And they're going to do the inspection,
yeah,
and they're going to be happier when they purchased it because they won't have felt like they were rushed, only got a half hour to look at it, didn't get time to actually, inspect all the nooks and crannies, and then on top of it, didn't get to have an inspection or have their parents
right,
walk through it.
right.
Yeah.
I forgot to put the sticker up.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll continue to see, in that like 300,000 to 450 range, depending on the area. We're going to continue to see decent demand and a lot of market activity.
Yeah.
Probably for the next 2-3 months. I think it will be business as usual for the most part. I think what's going to change more so than actually feeling the effects as a active buyer in the market right now is just the sentiment.
Right.
And like, but I think that it's definitely a better time to buy now than it was. And yeah, interest rates are temporary. I think that,
Yeah.
you have a good opportunity to get a really great home in the location that you want if you can qualify for it. And I think that these rates are going to come down.
Yeah.
And
They will. They will eventually, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
and when that happens, whether it's through the use of a recession or just they're able to land the plane naturally, and they start cutting rates next year sometime. I think that prices are going to continue to climb.
Yeah.
Because the underlying thing here is immigration. And that's another thing that Tiff Macklem talked about, Governor Bank of Canada, at his press conference, was that, fiscal policy and monetary policy from the federal government are kind of butting heads with each other. And that's what's like making this inflation stickier than what they thought. When you have, 1.2 million new immigrants in Canada, obviously they're not all coming to Winnipeg, but like a lot of them will, when they realize how expensive the cost of living is in Toronto and Vancouver, and how much bang for their buck they can get in Manitoba,
Yeah.
Saskatchewan, East Coast, like some of these other provinces. If they're willing to bear the weather, I think there's going to be more, with new immigration. I think there's going to be more emphasis on consolidation with real estate. So what I mean by that is, like, you're going to probably see, with the rates being a little bit higher, different families purchasing real estate together.
Yeah.
And you'll have multi-generational families kind of living in one place. I think that rural municipalities and the city, in terms of zoning and planning, they're going to need to get their shit together pretty quick to help builders, developers with permitting, for conditional use or secondary suite permits, or
Right.
to create more density.
Yeah.
Because if not, even in the higher interest rate territory, just with the immigration demand for housing, I think that we are going to be in this position when the rates come back down, where the prices are going to go stupid.
Yeah.
Because like I was talking to a pretty big developer a couple weeks ago, and one of the larger home builders that we sell for.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because he said that the sentiment is kind of the same throughout the industry when it comes to developing, that if the credit is like the cost of credit, like the credit is higher, it's more expensive for them to borrow money, and the cost of infrastructure is more expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why would they take the risk on putting out millions and millions and millions of dollars just to take a wait and see approach?
Right.
Like, you got to buy the land, and then you have to, that's step number one. You got to buy the land.
There's lots more
And
to
so
it.
now you've got, a couple million bucks out, and then you've got to do your development applications. Like, this stuff takes sometimes years to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So what he was saying was that, like, they're just not doing it right now. They put everything on pause. Well, that's their choice, because it's their money and it's their risk. But they are intentionally withholding inventory from an already down inventory market.
Sure.
Where we are going to need new housing.
Yeah.
We're going to need more single family, multifamily. And it's only going to take, Winnipeg is only so large, Manitoba is only so large. It's only going to take a handful of those larger scale developers to have the same mindset.
Right.
Where nothing will get done.
Yeah.
And then, when rates do come trickling back down, whenever they do, or if the demand increases, we're going to be in a really difficult position again.
Right.
And, the supply and demand curve is going to be like way off. And so I think that there's kind of like a standstill right now. Track builders aren't putting basements in the ground. They're not building specs to the same rate that they were before. So they're not creating inventory. And same thing with developers. And then you have municipalities in this Winnipeg that aren't willing to help them. And then the municipalities aren't communicating with the federal government to what they need. And it's just like big mess. But yeah. It's a shit show, to sum it up. But be interesting to see where it goes.
Yes, it's always interesting, that's for sure.
Never a dull moment in real estate.
Never a dull moment. Yeah. Always trying to figure out what's going on next.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell a story.
Yeah, let's hear something lighter than what we just talked about.
Well, it's not so super light, but I was showing a house to some houses to some people who are first-time home buyers, and we kind of walked into this house and walked out right away because the foundation was super wonky, and it was just like, this is no good.
Mm-hmm.
So, we walked in, and as we were walking out, I noticed that the door was basically like screwed together, like where the door handle was and the deadbolt. There was like a bunch of screws in the door.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I opened the door. I looked at the door frame. It was all broken, and they had just screwed it, like put a million screws in there. So I was like, it looks like somebody broke in here at one point and they didn't fix it properly. They just put like a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even in a bad area. It was in a great area, but
that stuff happens.
Yeah. So, kind of got me thinking, and my clients asked, have you ever dealt with a situation where somebody's broken into your home? And I said, well, I had a situation when I was a kid, and then my wife and I had a situation where our home in North Kildonan got broken into, but luckily we had an alarm, and the sound of the siren scared them away.
Oh, that's good.
They didn't even take anything. They were just like, they threw a bunch of stuff on the floor and made a big mess and like kicked our door. But yeah, the cops were there like immediately. But I told them this story about when I was a kid. And so even though it's not like, like a real estate, like day in the life story, something that I've gone through as a realtor, I thought it was kind of a crazy story, because it is.
It's a home ownership story.
Yeah. And I think the importance of, having a dog. So when I grew up in a town called Newton, Manitoba, which is between Oakville, Manitoba, and Portage. It's not even a town, it's like a village. And we lived on this acreage right off of the Trans-Canada number 1 highway. We were like 1 mile south of the number 1 highway, and there was an intersection there. And there wasn't like a set of lights or anything. It was just like a stop sign, gravel roads everywhere.
Yeah.
And so used to take the bus, and the school bus would pick me up at the end of my driveway. And we had an acreage, and our house was set back in the bush pretty far from the gravel road. And so the bus I'd have to like walk the length of my driveway, which was an ungodly walking as a kid. It was like half a mile. No, not half a mile, but like it
was probably
that way as a kid. Like it was a huge driveway. So, anyways, I think I was in grade, I want to say I was in grade 6, and the bus dropped me off from school at the end of my driveway. And it was pouring rain, like absolutely just coming down.
Yeah.
So normally when I got off the school bus, my dogs would always meet me at the end of the driveway. Even when it was pouring rain, they'd be sitting there waiting for me. So they would follow me out to the bus when I would get on the bus, and then they would wait for me. They just knew like the time when I was, like their internal clock.
Yeah.
So this time around, the dogs weren't there.
Oh.
And my dad worked, he fixed cars, and he had a shop on our property. So like customers would come and go all the time. And my mom worked in Portage. So I knew that she was at work, and I knew that she came home like, in the evening. Sometimes my parents wouldn't be home when I got home. So I had my own key. And anyways, so it's like pouring rain. I get off the school bus, and I'm like, where are my dogs? And I'm walking down the driveway, and I see like articles of clothing that are spread across my driveway. There's like, it looks like a ripped pair of jeans, like a pant leg. And then there was like a shoe. There was like a shoe in the ditch beside our driveway.
Oh,
and like a hat. I'm like, what the heck happened? And so I started calling for my dogs, but they weren't coming. And so we had these, we had a purebred German Shepherd, and then we had like a German Shepherd mutt. Her name was Mitzi.
Yeah.
And both dogs were like the friendliest dogs ever. They just loved everybody. But I remember as a kid, like we would have people come over to get their vehicles looked at or fixed. And there were some people that they just wouldn't like, and they would bark and bark and bark and snarl, and they wouldn't let people out of the cars.
Oh, wow.
And, but everybody else, like for the most part, they were really great. They were super friendly dogs, and they were outside dogs. They each had dog houses. And, so anyways, I'm like yelling at this point for my dogs. I'm like, where, like, Mitzi, Leah, like, where are you? They weren't coming. pouring rain. So I ran to the house, and then we had this old farmhouse. It was like probably 700 square feet, but we had a little porch on the side, like a little
Yeah.
breezeway. So you had to open the porch door, and then it was like 3-season. And then we had a screen door, and then we had like an old wooden farm, like an old house door, with
Yeah.
like a skeleton key.
Yeah.
And so I ran up to the porch, and there was blood everywhere,
Oh my God.
like up the door, on our siding of our house, down the siding of our house.
Yeah.
There was like blood that had smeared into the puddles from the rain.
Oh my God.
And then both my dogs, on both sides of the porch, there was a dog house on this side and a dog house on this side. And both the dogs were in their dog houses. And that wasn't like them. So I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And Mitzi came out of her doghouse, and she had a piece of her nose was missing.
Oh my God.
And then I started freaking out. And I mean, I didn't have a cell phone back then. So I go into the porch, and there is a hatchet, like a little axe, that's laying on the floor of our porch. And there's blood everywhere, like literally smeared everywhere. And the screen of our screen door was completely ripped off. And then our old door was broken, and it was like booted in on the bottom, like a panel of the door was kicked in, and then there was like hatchet marks in the door.
Oh my God.
So I reached in and I unlocked it, and I was yelling like, hello, hello, hello. Nobody was coming. So then I kind of assumed that my dad was gone, because sometimes he would go to town for parts or something. And so got into the house, grabbed the landline phone. There was no sign of disturbance or anything in the house at all. I called my dad's cell phone, and I was like, what the heck's going on here? There's blood everywhere. And he's got like a piece of her nose missing. And like, he was like, hold on, I'll call you back. I'm just coming home from Portage. And at that intersection on number 1 highway and our road that took us to our house, he said, I'm coming up to a whole bunch of lights, and like police lights, and there's an ambulance here. He said, let me call you back. And he said, are you okay there? I said, yeah, I'm okay. So he's like, just go in and lock yourself in the house. Bring the dogs in with you. So I did. My dad calls me back. He said, I pulled over, and I talked to one of the RCMPs, and apparently there was a hitchhiker that was dropped off at that intersection.
Yeah.
And the guy was on drugs or something. He's messed up, and he wandered into our property, and the dogs started barking at him. So he tried running towards our house.
Uh-huh.
But one of our dogs grabbed him, bit him in the leg.
Uh-huh.
And he managed to get into our porch, and he found a hatchet that was in like a bucket in our porch. And that's what he was using to defend himself against our dog.
Oh my God.
And he tried getting in our house, and he had already been bit pretty bad. And so he tried booting the door in. But our dog prevented him from getting in our house. And long story short, our dog dragged the guy out of our porch, bit his foot off.
Oh my God.
And then the guy crawled all the way back to the highway.
Holy shit.
Where somebody spotted him and called the RCMP, and they were there right away. But the guy admitted that he was hitchhiking from Winnipeg, and he was trying to get to Saskatchewan, but they pulled his criminal record, and he had just got out of the remand, the jail, for burglary, break and enter. And that's what he was trying to do at our place. Like he figured, if no one was home, he could just break in and take whatever he wanted and move
Wow.
on. But he
The
was
dog said no.
pretty messed up. Yeah.
Wow.
So my dad said, go down the driveway with a garbage bag and try to pick up as much debris as you can. So my dad showed up there and him and I were going around. Sure enough, that shoe that was laying in the ditch had the guy's whole foot in it.
Oh my God, James.
So
how old were you when this happened?
Well, grade 6. So
holy crap. Like,
yeah. Fun on the farm.
Fun on the farm is right. Holy mackerel. No thanks.
So, yeah, tons of value in having a good dog.
Wow.
As a security system.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I notice that nowadays a lot of people don't have monitored security alarm systems.
Yeah.
Because of ring cams and like stuff like that. They can just watch people and record them, which is awesome. And then if there's an issue, you just call the cops.
Right.
But we didn't have an alarm system either, but luckily we had the dogs.
Yeah.
And the RCMP had my dad fill out had me and my dad fill out a police report.
Yeah.
Just based on like what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and I were really concerned that they would take our dog.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But they said, no, you don't have to worry about that because of his intent and because he was like on drugs and stuff, I guess. Yeah. He had every intention of doing harm.
Oh wow.
And so they were defending our property.
Well, and themselves. I mean, when the guy starts hitting them with a hatchet, they're going to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we took her to the vet and they stitched up her nose and it ended up growing back. She had like a kind of like a deformed nose for a while, but no, she was great.
Wow.
But yeah, so not like a super thrill.
No, that's not a light story at all.
Not a light story, but
yeah.
But I figured it was a crazy story and
yeah,
dealing with people who are concerned about a burglary.
Well, and so much of that's happening nowadays, right? Like it happens everywhere now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
Crazy story.
Let's get into our weekly topic.
Our weekly topic: what to know before selling a house.
Yeah. So
the costs.
Yeah. So you're ready to, you know that you want to sell your house. You've called the realtor.
Mm-hmm.
You've called us. What are some of the costs associated with putting the house up for sale? And then, after you sell the home. So I'll let you stick handle this one.
Okay. Well, of course there's the commission. That's always I'll say the big one, mm-hmm. The main one that people like to talk about, but there are a lot of other costs, right?
Yeah.
When I sit down with people that are trying to figure out if they, will have enough money for their down payment on their next house or what have you. Some of the things we talk about are mortgage penalties and any liens on title, anything, any rentals that have to be paid out. Like if you're, got the hot water tank on rental or an alarm on rental, is it transferable? Do you have to pay it out? Can you transfer it to your new house or is it transferable to the buyer? That kind of stuff. There's going to be obviously lawyers' fees and closing costs and any adjustments for property taxes and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. We could also talk about possibly having storage or staging costs.
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these costs aren't things I can put down on paper and as a number right here and now, right? Because, yeah, it's a percentage for commission, but mortgage penalties, every mortgage is written differently. It's often 3 months interest, but if you got a promo mortgage, it could be $20,000, right? So it just depends on what kind of mortgage you have, and what you owe on it. So it's always good for you to sign something to let me inquire with the bank.
Yes.
To find out how much that penalty is going to be and what the payout will be.
Yeah, I feel like that's the most common, like, unforeseen cost.
Yeah, it's often a surprise. I'm often like, people will be like, "Oh, I never thought of that," or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or if we're talking, to other people who have gone through the process, "Oh yeah, it wasn't suggested to us to even look at that." And so, yeah, when we had to pay, $4,000 in penalties, yeah, it's a big thing. Like I was saying earlier, you can port your mortgage, so that could possibly prevent you from having to pay that penalty. But then you're going to have a cost of having to stay somewhere for at least a month, probably a month and a half, to ensure that you're going to have your payout before you take possession of the new house, so that rate can be blended. And I think that's going to be more popular over the next year or two, as I have clients who still have like a rate in the 2s. And so then they can blend it with that, 5.34 or whatever, and get something in the middle, which can make a big difference.
Yeah, big saving grace there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you have to be able to, I don't know, move into mom's basement or something, or a really good friend. So yeah, those are definitely some of the costs. I would say also to check with if you're selling an investment property or a cottage, any secondary home, it's good to talk to your accountant before you sell, to find out what the implications are going to be for capital gains. And part of staging could be maintenance and repairs. Like, I always like to go through the property with my clients and, point out the things that need to be done before, especially right now. You need your house to show A+. So some of the maintenance and repairs are going to be easy, like spraying the weeds, or right, because that really affects the first impression. But other things could be, I like to see people paint the trim around the garage door, because it's one of the most neglected things. But it's the first thing buyers see when they're walking up the driveway. But I mean, that's cheap. That's a gallon of paint, right?
And if you can't do stuff yourself, then hiring a good handyman.
To do
somebody to do that stuff for you.
Yeah. So again, those aren't costs I can I write on paper and say, okay, it's going to cost you this much to sell your house. But these are things that we have to consider when we're sitting down chatting. You're listing a house that needs new shingles. Should we be looking at what this costs, or at least getting an estimate to see how much it's going to cost, and how much is it going to affect the sale if you don't do it? And stuff like that. So those are conversations that we can have when we're talking about listing your place. And then, storage is a big one, because I feel like, everyone has so much stuff these days, and it's hard to show a house at its best when it's full of stuff. Right? It just, buyers have a hard time seeing themselves inside it. So some sort of storage, whether it be a pod, which I find very expensive, or storage, which then you have to have the ability to move stuff back and forth. I mean, some of those storage places offer a truck, but if you don't have the ability to move boxes, then that's not a great option, right?
Ask a friend or family member if you can use their garage.
That's a much cheaper option.
Or basement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's about like picking a room in the house that you fill with boxes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the ideal, but I
Hmm.
mean, it's definitely a cheaper option if money's tight, which I mean, right now with the way the economy has been, money's tight with pretty much everybody these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it means thousands of dollars of return on investment, it's worth spending,
Yes.
right? So if we can show your house at its absolute best and get you that top dollar,
Yeah.
then yeah, paying for storage for a few weeks is worth it. And yeah, I know it's a lot of work to move all your stuff, and it can be a pain to live without all your stuff.
Mm.
But again, like it's all about that. You know, how much bank can we get from it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The last thing you want to do as a seller is have, when you put your house up for sale, is to have a buyer go through. I just went through this. So I
yeah,
showed the house this morning, and pictures looked amazing. And
yeah,
pictures showed that the house was owner occupied and it was lived in.
yeah.
But when we went there, they had moved out. So they were
Oh, okay.
already 2 feet out the door, right?
Yeah,
But they didn't, after they moved out, they didn't do anything. And the house was heavily lived in, you know?
oh
So
no.
like, needed paint, it needed baseboards, it needed trim, it
Yeah,
needed, the fridge and the stove were filthy inside.
yeah.
Um,
And I feel vacant homes need paint and cleaning more
yeah,
than lived in. Sorry,
absolutely. And
right? Because they show everything.
everything. And
Yeah,
like, dust, like all the pot lights had like dust that was caked in there because they had ceiling fans that
right.
stirred the dust up.
Yeah,
And the heat from the pot lights just
it
absorbed all
suck
the
it up.
dust,
Yeah,
sucked it up there.
yeah,
So, anecdotally, like, because the house is vacant, you don't have furniture to look at, you're looking at all of the imperfections.
that's
And
right.
then the buyers are making a list in their mind as they go room by room. They're like, holy crap, those baseboards. Okay, paint. Okay, light fixtures. Okay, cracked window. Okay, this, that. And by
Right.
the end, it's just so overwhelming
Yes,
that even though it's all little piddly things,
it
a
just feels
lot of
like too much.
it feels like way too much. And then they're like, yeah, next, on to the next one.
Right.
Because if the sellers didn't take the time, then what else is going on that we don't know about, right? And
I
those,
find a clean house just makes such a huge
oh,
difference.
such a
Like
difference. Yeah.
just having it cleaned makes it feel more cared for,
Yeah.
and that better feeling that the buyer walks through because it's clean.
Yeah.
They're not as critical on every little thing
Right.
then, right?
And I understand, like, everybody's definition of clean is so different.
Sure.
But one
But
thing,
showing clean is showing clean. Like
yeah,
if you're showing it, it needs to be pristine.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have trouble cleaning, then
Hire someone.
let us know. We have tons of cleaners. And
Yeah.
um, after those touch ups and repairs and decluttering and putting stuff in storage, after that's all done, it doesn't hurt to get someone in, get the pro in,
Yeah.
and just give it a once over, and then you don't have to worry about it again.
Yeah, they're remembering to do stuff like the top of the baseboards and the fans and the pot
Yeah.
lights and the yeah, um, all the things that people's eyes are drawn to as a buyer, but that we don't notice on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many houses I've gone into where the bathroom fan vent looks so disgusting, and
Yeah.
it's like, as
I
a buyer, your eyes are often going up, so of course you're going to see it.
I feel like, like, it's so important to use professional photographers.
That too,
Um,
yeah.
but, um, you
The
know,
one that
I
doesn't Photoshop.
yeah, but I would say that most realtors now, they use, like, if you're hiring a good realtor, they've got a photographer. And so the one thing that I hear a lot now from buyers is like, either the house is is a perfect representation of the photos in person,
Yeah.
or it's disappointing and the pictures told lies, so like, if you can do the work to make your house pristine and make it look in person as good as it does in the photos, it's going to be that much more enticing to the buyer when they walk in.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, this looks exactly like it does in the photo. How impressive,
Right.
versus like walking in and being like, oh man, there's so much to do. And then they feel like they've just been gut punched because they've
Right.
fallen in love with it online, but
And they're not even seeing the same house.
they've been catfished,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like looking at the paper to make sure that they're at the right address.
Yeah. It's like blind dating, or like Tinder. Like they're swiping, they're like looking at the photos and they're like, oh man, this house is hot. Let's book a showing. Let's go on a date. And then they go on the date and they're like, oh, like you can't even brush your teeth. You can't even like,
right.
It stinks in here. Like, yeah. So, make sure your house looks as good in person as it does in photos.
Yes. But I still think professional photos are important because like when you look at some of these ones that don't, like, I don't feel like they're doing the house any justice, especially in today's market where you need every advantage possible.
Absolutely.
But I like that, like the photographer we use, they don't use those silly fisheye lenses.
No, they make it like perfect representation.
Yeah, like they're not photoshopping things to make the room look way bigger or changing colors on things.
We'll use the right angles.
Yeah, they use the right angles and make sure that there's lots of light and so that it looks the best it can look.
Yeah.
The way it is.
Yeah. If you're a lazy seller expecting top dollar, you're going to be in for a surprise.
Right.
Especially as we've been saying, as things start to shift. So you need to step it up.
Yeah.
And then, so in terms of like photography and stuff like that, as a cost, those are all things that are part of our service. Photos, videos, all the marketing. So you don't have to worry about anything. That's it. Those are expenses that we incur. It's like a cost of doing business, and it's part of our
the commission.
Yeah, you don't have to give us a retainer up front to pay for that kind of stuff. It's we're essentially taking the risk and making sure that your house is actually going to sell.
And a lot of the costs can come out of the sale of home. Like, so commission comes out of sale of home, mortgage penalties come out of sale of home, liens on title can come out of, same with the rental payouts, property taxes, lawyers' fees, and those additional closing costs. Like all of that comes out of sale of home. So if you're putting out money, it's for maintenance and repairs, staging and storage.
Right.
That's what you'd be. And then again, you have to talk to your accountant about any tax implications. But again, that you're paying well after you've gotten the proceeds of your sale.
Generally, when you're just selling something, it's cheaper than it would be if you're just buying something, because you don't have to pay for land transfer tax on the sale. You don't have to pay for home insurance on the sale, unless you're selling to buy something else. Then you have to do that all over again.
Right. But, I do like to mention to people that are selling that to keep their insurance on until title has transferred. So basically, until you get your money, keep your insurance on, because even though someone else owns the house, technically, if the house was to burn to the ground or something, I have heard there being complications in getting it covered during that time frame. So it's better to be double insured by both the seller and the buyer during that time frame. And it's a minimal amount, right? So might as well make sure that there's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Because it's probably hard to transfer title on a house that burned down.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. But mhm.
Cool.
So that's selling a house, cost of selling.
Awesome. That was
Mhm.
great. So last but not least, let's give some shout outs, give some flowers to some local businesses. I'll go first. So,
Sure.
speaking of professional photographers,
Yep.
so anybody out there, whether you're in real estate, realtor, or not, maybe you're looking for a photographer for your business, or maybe you're looking for a photographer for like some products that you're trying to sell, or headshots for your company, or pet photos.
I was gonna say pet photos. He's done pet photos for me, and he's so good with the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my brother-in-law, Tyson Bednar, Tyson James Photo, excellent photographer. He does, all of our real estate photography and our videos, but he does everything and then some. So, I have some home builder clients. He has done pretty much all of their websites from front to back, like built
Right.
them out, done all of the media, done all of the content. He also has the ability to do, if you're, let's say you're a business owner and you want to tell your story, he can do more like media driven, interview style content for your business that you can use for your website, you can use for social media. He also does, pet photography, family portraits, and company portraits for if you have a lot of staff as a business owner. And he's so great to work with. Very, very professional, has all the right equipment, and he's reasonable. So
And he has awesome ideas.
and he has awesome ideas. Yeah, he's like super creative, thinking outside the box, and he understands marketing really well. So
Yeah.
that's Tyson James Photo, and I'll put a link to all of his stuff in the description. And then I have been getting back into the music scene. I used to be in a hardcore, like a metal band when I was in high school and just shortly out of high school. And then I got into real estate, and I kind of lost touch with, that scene and music, and like,
It's easy to give up all your hobbies in real estate.
yeah, but as I'm going through like a early midlife crisis, I'm realizing that, that was one thing in my life that I was super, super passionate about. And it like made me really happy.
Yeah.
Being involved in the scene and going to shows. And we are, now that COVID is done and everybody's touring again, traveling, we're kind of, the feeling is that we're going through a bit of a renaissance when it comes to music and the scene, where a lot of bands are touring again. I think a lot of bands were writing music, or were bummed out that they couldn't tour or whatever.
Right.
And during COVID, and now there are bands reforming, there are bands writing new music, and there are, tons of bands that are touring again. And I hadn't been to the Park Theater since they had renovated it until
Okay.
I think this year. Yeah, it was like January. And I love it. It's like my favorite music venue, I think, in the city, because it's not too big.
Yeah.
But it's also not too small. The sound is really great. The whole layout of the Park Theater is really great. And they just do a really good job with their marketing. They promote, they like promote their band, the bands that play there really well. And I feel like some of the promotion companies, like Ninja Cat Productions is one of them. They're the, I guess, the promoter that brings in a lot of the hardcore and the metal and the punk bands.
Oh yeah.
And they do a phenomenal job. And a lot of those bands end up playing at Park Theater. I've gone to a ton of shows, and I'm actually going to one next week there as well. And I just love it. It's like becoming like a second home for me now.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. So have to shout out the Park Theater. If anybody has a chance to go see live music there, they have tons of bands there all the time. They have, like, you know, if you're into hip hop, if you're into folk, if you're into just like rock and roll, you know, it's a great venue. And yeah, can't say enough good things about it. So that's it for me this week.
Well, I'm going to shout out Tommy's Pizzeria. We had a real broker event there a couple weeks ago, and their patio is just lovely.
Yeah.
And the food was amazing.
Food is great. Drinks were great.
Yeah. And yeah, it was a great atmosphere for our get together.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I would definitely go back there. Like,
yeah. It was
yeah, because they had a big like spread of like a whole bunch of different types of pizzas, and then like a bunch of different like appetizers and stuff like that. And yeah, everything was like, oh my God, like, how can you make this much food for this many people and it all be so tasty and so good?
Yeah, it was really good. I was so busy chatting with people, I forgot to eat much, but yeah, the bit I did have was really good. And I remember leaving there thinking, damn, I should have went back in and got some more food.
Yeah.
Because it was good.
Yeah. And they had this cocktail that was pretty dangerous. I can't remember what it was, but it was like I'm sure they have it on the menu, but
I'm sure they do, but it was a signature cocktail for that event.
Yeah, it was great. And then tons of beers on tap, like local beers on tap, lots of Trans-Canada Brewing beers on tap, which is cool. It's like some of my favorite. I think TCB beer is like probably some of my favorite beer in the city.
Oh yeah. Well, Tommy started at TCB, right? So they were partnered. So Tommy's was in their building on Kenniston. And then as they grew popular, they branched away.
Their own location. Yeah. Super cool.
So yeah, I'm sure they support each other a lot.
But yeah, if you're ever in the mood for, you know, small bites, some drinks, and some amazing pizza, Tommy's Pizzeria, they're on Corridon, and yeah, they're awesome. I think they're like Corridon, and is it Corridon and Lilac? Or
I want to say Lilac because I'm pretty sure the bakery was across the street.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, cool. Well, that's it for this pod. So thanks everybody for tuning in and watching or listening to the end, and hope you like my crazy dog story. And
that's insane.
Yeah, get a dog. It'll save your life. And
well, I guess it depends on the type of dog, because I can't see Penn and Mabel doing that.
Yeah. It would take a few of them to chew a guy's foot off, I think.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God, that's insane. Yeah. I mean, Penny sounds vicious, but I don't think she'd chew a foot off.
Get a big dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks guys for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
Sounds good. Take care, James.
Bye.
Bye.